Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
So, welcome back, everybody. Today we got two guests on. We got Pat Brennan and Wes Wennerstrom. If you've watched one of my other podcasts, The Completionists, you may recognize these guys. Because they are the co-completionists with me.
The co-completionists.
But we're not talking about movies.
This is like Infinity War.
It does kind of sound like that, yeah.
Anyway, we're not talking about movies tonight. We're going to be talking about the overuse of therapy speak and how that is kind of fucking things up as far as relations and social relations and stuff. So. The way this came about was Pat, Wes, and I have a group chat that we talk in, and one of us shared something, and I was like, "Oh, let's get started on talking about that on the podcast," because I thought it was going to be a great topic for us. So,
It was this woman, and it was like when someone's actually a bad friend and not like a therapist or something like that, and they were saying things like, "Sorry, I can't listen to trauma dumping," and it was like someone to tell them about like their dead cat or something like that, or
Kevin,
just avoiding all the kind of plans they made with the friend because they're like doing self-care. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a really kind of like cynical take on using therapy speak to kind of like get out of like what you need to have a friendship with people, like human relationships,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough because there is, I think the therapy speak aspect of things comes from a good place of like, we are a society that has finally started to get into embracing therapy and bettering ourselves psychologically. When we look at like 50 years ago, people, literally not wanting to talk about it, or it being, it being a much more taboo thing. Yeah. So obviously it comes from a good thing, but it's like anything else. The pendulum kind of swings too far.
Yeah, and I think it's also the greater macrocosm version of it is people misusing jargon terms in general. Sure. Taking political terms or things like DEI means everything now instead of specifically what it meant, and other stuff. Things like trigger warnings. And, safe spaces had specific meanings until the general masses got hold of them and made them meaningless because they use them for everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you could weaponize therapy speak better than you could weaponize those.
I definitely had an experience where I had to tell someone the difference between a content warning and a trigger warning, that they're a little bit different.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
It was kind
I'll
of,
be honest, I don't know the difference.
Trigger warning specifically used to mean it can cause PTSD kind of reactions versus content is just you should know the content because you may have issues with the content. It doesn't have like a trigger warning is a content warning, but a content warning is not necessarily a trigger warning.
Oh, it's the square rectangle situation.
It all goes in the square hole.
Especially books, apparently.
I want to get back into the jargon situation for a second, which is, I want to talk about the fact that I think, Matthew, you're right about the DEI and other things being used, but I think that with the psychological terminology and therapy speak, it's a little more meaningful when it's being abused. Like DEI has become everything.
Definitely. You could do more personal damage with therapy speak when they do public damage with calling everything DEI or everything CRT. Sure. They do more political damage, but one-on-one, if you really want to hurt someone, you use therapy speak.
But I also think that therapy speak hasn't lost its meaning in the same way. Just because we're overusing it, and I
think
not
some words have, like narcissist has. Nobody thinks of narcissist being a clinical diagnosis anymore. Yeah. It's just, you're a narcissist because you comb your hair nice.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you don't agree with what I have to say, therefore you're a narcissist or something like that.
Yeah. Criticism coming up as narcissism. Yeah.
And I think it's probably similar to like CRT was the demon for a while. And now they got tired of those initials, so they went on to DEI. it's probably the same thing with therapy speak words. Like some of them have been so abused that they've lost meaning in the general populace, and that they move to new ones.
As someone with bipolar, it's something that I hear all the time, which is like, oh, they're being bipolar. And I'm like,
they've got a polar bear and a penguin. They must be bipolar.
And I feel like autism is getting that right now, too, where everything is autism.
Everyone's self-diagnosis. That's the case when you self-diagnose.
Or is like, well, they're clearly, like, they're autistic. They're, and I feel like that is happening a lot. But also, like, the phenomenon that Wes and I and Pat started talking about is different than that too, in the sense that it's like self-advocacy, which is what we want people to do, but they're doing it in the shittiest ways imaginable. Like, so it's not like, hey, Pat, I know you want to go invade Rhode Island with me, but I really think that would be bad for me. It's more like, hey, it's more like Pat being like, hey, I'd like to hang out with you sometime this year. Me being like, I don't know if I can do that. Like there's just like a genericness to it. Like I want the credit for being your friend without doing anything. I want the credit for being your brother, husband, son, whatever. And I don't want to do any of those things. And I want to just have this out, this perfect out for it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I think the thing is, it's like, it's the sort of thing where, it's the when the things fall down from when the air cabin gets depressurized, you're supposed to put your mask on and then help the person that can't do it next to you, right? Yeah. Everyone kind of has taken that to the degree where they're like, oh, I can hear I'm supposed to put this mask on for myself, and they just leave the last part off, and they don't think about, oh, then I'm supposed to help someone else. So self-care becomes not, oh, I need to, take time to take care of myself because I might get burnt out and then I won't be any good to the rest of the community or the people around me. And instead it becomes self-care is I take care of myself and then
it's the end goal.
You take care of yourself too, and we don't worry about each other.
Right. Self-care is supposed to be a vacation and people are making it retirement.
Exactly. And I think that's, Matthew, kind of going back around to what you're talking about, it's it's kind of like the root of conservatism too. You think about that. It's like, I'm going to just do for me and everyone else can do for themselves. And we're all going to be, fine. Because I think that's kind of what we're starting to see here is like therapy or therapeutic words being used for these very, kind of creepy conservative purposes. And I think you could see potentially the same thing happening that happened with like holistic medicine and homeopathy and stuff like that be used on therapy. And that led to, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and stuff like that. But it's going to be a lot worse because therapy is actually like very important to society where, no offense to homeopathic medicine, but it's not like,
no offense.
Keeping people alive.
No offense, please.
No offense.
Well, so
homeopathic and medicine don't go together.
So I'm a therapist provider. I actually do private practice therapy. And when I was in graduate school for social work, this term self-care was really starting to kind of like, this was pre-pandemic, and it was really starting to get kind of too much. And like every class we had, inevitably you'd have some professor going, are you all practicing self-care? And it was a good thing, right? Because that is one of the original intentions of self-care, was to help people that were providers and caretakers and classically marginalized people get care. It wasn't intended to be just something for everybody at anytime you want it, right? And it was just so much that we'd have classes where the professor would bring this up. And people were like, excuse me, can you not talk about this anymore? Like we've heard so much about this. Like this is just getting to be too much. And it was really getting conflated with this idea that self-care wasn't, like Pat's saying, is something you do so you can connect with your community. It was getting conflated with kind of like a consumer product stance, where it's like, did you do a
like
bubble
treat
bath?
Yourself like that?
Exactly. And in my grad school cohort, people started to say like, no, we reject this idea of self-care. It should be communal care. Like that is the root of what this is supposed to be, not what you're telling us. So,
the place where I got most introduced to it is my wife and daughter, Wes and Pat, since you probably don't know, are super active activists, political activists and advocates. And in that environment, they talk about it a lot. Like when you've been, beating the streets and been at the General Assembly every day, you need to practice self-care, because if you just stress yourself out, you're no good to anyone. You can't be good to the movement if you don't occasionally take a break to yourself. But it's not as clinical as the correct usage, but it's more in line with it of just you're helping other people, but you can't do that if you're putting yourself in physical, mental danger. You need to rest and then come back refreshed, not quit doing it and saying it's self-care, but take the weekend. You don't have to go to this No Kings, go to the next one kind of thing.
Yeah. I think too, Wes, you're talking about professionals, but I think we've all, I don't know about Alex, but the rest of us have all recently experienced people who've in our lives have been taken care of, caretaking for other people. So like so Sarah right now has been caretaking with her father and her uncle of her grandmother, who's been sick for the last few weeks. And right after her grandfather died. And my parents care took for my, like, literally to the point of burnout, to the point where like they would go, my aunts would come over and they'd take a weekend and just go sleep all weekend because they were so burned out. And I know that you guys have experienced this with your own families, and Matthew with your father and your mother-in-law. I'm sure you got some of this, in the last few years.
You could see it. My mother's physical health is better now that my father has passed away because she was his primary caretaker, and it was taking so much out of her.
So we have three. I'm sorry, Alex, do you have kids?
I do not.
You don't? Okay.
Not his own.
So, okay, gotcha. So
none that I know about.
As a parent, like, have you seen that meme of like, it's like Yoda, Mark Hamill, like asking Yoda questions until Yoda just dies finally.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is what it's like to be a parent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being a parent
I have nieces and nephews that I'm close with. That is real.
Well, being a parent is so exhausting, right? And it's like, if you just don't stop yourself, you can just do things forever, know?
Yeah.
And you have to stop yourself sometimes. And that's what they're saying is like, take a break, take care of your body, so you don't die on your kids or something like that,
Right.
I saw a great meme the other day. If you find parenting difficult and exhausting, you're doing it right.
There you go.
I was about to mention I'm in my early 40s, so I had parents that were, that you do everything for your children no matter what. And I have people my age and somewhat younger that have, those are my nieces and nephews. And I've told so many of them many times, if you're not your best, you cannot be the best for your child. So it is not guilt. It is not negative. It is not being selfish, making sure that you're at 100. Because like you were mentioning, being a parent is exhausting. If you're starting at 75, you're going to be at 0 before the day's over, and you're not going to be that best parent for that child. You're going to be exhausted and giving them a lesser quality of life. So you were speaking generationally, self-care was not big for my parents' generation. It wasn't. So my mother exhausted herself. So did my father. Same thing. And the way that they integrated with us as kids obviously changed a lot as we got older. And we realized, no, I'm going to do me first. And that's not selfish. It's making sure I can be the best.
There's an extent to which I agree with you, but I think that is also overused when it comes to parenting. Like, I think that there's got to be a balance, because if you are doing what you need to be doing, what you should be doing, you're still going to feel burned out and exhausted sometimes as a parent. Like, so like, I don't think you can take the amount of self-care you need to be 100% and be a good parent. Like at the same time, like you can take moments and take breaks and you can but I don't think it. And
well, I think it depends on how well you co-parent. If you're in a co-parenting situation, like if you're a single parent, you're in a lot of trouble if you don't have a support network, grandparents or something to help take their. But the fact that you can say, okay, I'm taking the kids with me, on Saturday, and Saturday's all yours, and then Sunday, if you can take the kids, Sunday's all mine. You can give each other breaks when you're co-parenting that you can't do sometimes in other situations.
Yeah.
But if you have a shitty co-parent who doesn't do their side, like the Generation X father, not generation, the father that we in Generation X had, like dad didn't take care of kids. That was babysitting if the dad took care of the kids.
Correct.
It wasn't
Right.
part of
Yeah.
parenting. You know?
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. Also, I think that it depends on the stage. So obviously, Matthew, your kids are adults, so like it's a different thing for you.
Yeah, we
Logan
just have to distract them long enough to get away.
yeah. Logan is fairly self-sufficient. Wes's daughter is not quite 2. So Wes is probably in a much more exhaustive state of parenting than I am, and almost certainly than you are, Matthew.
I don't
Because
parent anymore.
because he has to be on, like, he has to worry about her bumping her head on the corner of the table. I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Well,
I have to worry. Well,
To where my kid's sitting on the
I've
floor
met
in the
you
kitchen
and
watching
Logan,
the
so-
refrigerator for some reason.
yeah,
I bump my head on the table all the time. I gotta move that
Yeah.
table.
right.
I did it on the way up the stairs.
But like I can do, like, you know, the last 2 weeks Sarah was in Massachusetts and Logan was in his room and he would,
And I forgot, and I
and-
left town.
no, and he would, but like Wes can't just like leave his 2-year-old in the other room by herself for hours unless she's sleeping. Like, you know, like that's why when I say like I don't know the 100%
Well,
thing.
that's why I say if you're co-parenting, you can, right? If your spouse is home,
to some
you
extent.
can leave.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean-
if you're single, you can. And I'm not saying that you always can, because you may have a spouse who is, you know, for a period of time just working on business travel, so you don't have to get home from 2 weeks of business travel and be like, she's yours now, you know?
Yeah.
Or just be a single parent, not have it.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
now
I mean,
we're
I
all.
think
Sorry.
if you
go ahead,
get
Wes.
if you're a C+ parent, that's pretty good, you know. But like, you know, I think that talking about like care of self and like care of like your like physiological systems, like your sleep, your adrenal system, if that's all fucked, you know, and your kid is like screaming, you know, it's like you are more at risk of like victimizing the child, you know. So it's like that might be where you're like getting into the ethics of like why you actually need to do this, and it's not like a choice, right? You know.
So in your professional capacity, what have you seen therapy speak, and when have you seen it, and how has it involved itself in you trying to use it in a clinical fashion, and then your clients or their families using it in maybe a less less fruitful manner?
Yeah, you know, I think that I will kind of like set up the session so I'm pretty specific with people. You know, like we'll go through diagnostically and see what's going on with them. To kind of preempt that a little bit, I will tell you that like most people think they have ADHD, and that's usually wrong, or ADD. You know, so we'll run the actual formal assessments, and that usually does a pretty good job of dispelling this. But since most people don't have that available, you know, like, you know, they're probably going to make errors when assessing their own behavior, right?
Yeah.
My wife keeps saying that my problem's probably ADHD, and I'm like, no, I'm fucking senile. I'm old. I didn't used to be dumb.
Yeah. I got my diagnosis when I was very young. I had a really active mother. She's an educator, so I had a very active mother, and she has 2 boys, 4 years apart. I'm the older of the 2, and the 2 of us, therapy and its clinical use in even the early 90s was a big part of our childhoods. And I had, again, that distant father kind of relationship where he didn't really understand much of it at all, despite many of the symptoms he had himself. I'm his child, it's no surprise. So I would not feel comfortable using that language with him because he wouldn't understand it, or would think that's silly sissy stuff. What's wrong with you? Right. And those are the very words he would use to describe it. So 2 boys, I'm going to take care of myself. Pull your socks up, you know, was the approach that we had when we were younger. Even though I had a mom that I was ADHD before it was popular. Before it was vogue, I had it.
Well, you know, I will say that being a therapist and then just having to live normal life and have like conflicts with people, you know, people frequently misuse this kind of stuff, right? Like we were talking about trigger warnings. I'm not going to name names, but someone was telling me that I shouldn't make fun of Elon Musk in a group chat because she wanted a trigger warning first. And I had to educate her. I was like, that's actually not a trigger warning, right? You can say, hey, I don't like that kind of content, and like my
Right.
request is that you don't do that, but because she used trigger warning, I was like, hey, you really shouldn't do that, because that's about people with PTSD reliving things like violence, sexual violence, wars and stuff. It doesn't really apply.
Genuine trauma
Yeah,
that they'd have a response to that's less so something they can suppress
yeah.
on their
And
own.
if you don't want to hear about Elon Musk, just say, hey, I actually don't want to talk about Elon Musk. Really simple. We don't need to talk about triggers, trigger warnings.
Was that individual using it to try to seem less against the grain?
Yeah, was she
and
like
that's why they
intentionally
use such
abusing the term, or
language?
just
Yeah,
using
was
it in
she
casual
intentionally, or
conversation, thinking it's just a
right?
casual term? That means I don't like it.
She thought it
Yeah.
was casual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because
well,
otherwise,
so she
it
was
reminds
like,
me of
she was like, I'm
saying
going to
you have
set
a
up
food allergy when you really just don't want something on your burger. And then you tell
so
the
Yes.
waiter you have an allergy to make sure for sure. But then everyone's suddenly making your food in a different part of the kitchen and doing all this work because you just didn't say I don't like onions.
So let me ask you a question, Wes.
mm-hmm.
Outside of that, like if someone's misusing, so like a lot of times I think that a lot of this comes from a lack of other terminology. So I'll give you an example of last year. I had a mental health issue. When I'm explaining it to people, I try to use the phrasing of layman's terms, not like I try to say this is me using what is probably a technical term in a layman's terms way, and I say that I had what I think of as a nervous breakdown, but it was not diagnosed as that, and I always word it that way because I didn't get a specific diagnosis for what happened to me. I don't have any other words for what happened to me other than like mental health crisis is so vague, so I'm trying to give people like I had like panic attacks and anxiety attacks, like I'm trying to give them a bigger bubble, but I also couch it in this is not what a doctor said, this is what I'm saying, and I always make that clear. And do you think that that's something that you see too, whereas like it's a lack of other vocabulary, and so we're picking up these words that are too heavy-handed in that process?
Yeah, I mean, it totally could be. I mean, people routinely kind of misuse the phrase trauma to just say like it was a bad thing that happened to me,
Okay.
But I think the way that you're approaching it is really fair. It's like, yeah, I had this thing that I felt like was a mental health crisis, right? Like you're not putting that on another person. I didn't get diagnosed with that as a doctor, so somebody that's reliving something that might be like something more severe might, be able to say like, okay, well, he acknowledges that maybe it wasn't clinically the same thing. And that like me having PTSD, I don't have to feel isolated now that he's kind of claiming this territory when clearly this is this is a chronic issue for me throughout my lifetime and has actual PTSD. So I think you're doing fine at it.
Yeah, I mean, I did see therapists. They just didn't have a title for what I had. So
Or they didn't
for what
tell you.
happened,
They didn't give you a diagnosis. They just started.
And so, like, when I'm explaining to people why I went on leave of absence, I'm like, I need words for this. And especially, like, family, if I want to, like, kind of shut down a conversation so I'm not getting into too much personal detail, I kind of just say, like, this, this is what happened. I had, all these things. But I am very stringent about keeping that wording in of being like, they didn't say I had a mental health breakdown. I'm saying that it felt like what I consider a mental
I don't
health
want to
breakdown.
step on Wes's professional toes, but I think the correct technical term you should use is I was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I mean, when you use that, everyone gets it.
Yeah.
I think the kind of what we got into with this discussion is when you use this against other people, right? Like when we weaponize therapy speak. So if you're out there saying
Stop
like,
gaslighting me, Wes.
Yeah, that kind of
Lord,
crap.
that one too.
Yeah, which I dealt with another. I was playing music with some people. Sorry, I keep giving my personal examples here, but I was playing music with a guy.
They work.
And I was like, we were like trying to play some shows, and I was like, we need to put some music out here so people will book us for shows. And he was like, I don't want to have any. I don't want to have any strictures with this. I don't want to have any timelines. I'll do this whenever I feel like mixing the song. Da da da. And I was like, well, that's not going to work because we need music to book shows. And he goes, I feel like you're gaslighting me. It's like, that doesn't make, first of all, any sense, right? But
So
yeah, it's just like, it's kind of like, okay, we're having this conversation. I don't like it. Therefore, I'm going to put this arbitrary boundary down with therapy speak that if you cross makes you seem like you are like violating me. But really, that's not even happening, you know?
right.
Yeah, I think it's like claiming an allergy when you don't like, when it's just you don't
Right.
like the food, because it
Right.
ensures that everything has to be done your way
Yeah.
because it's dangerous if it isn't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Pat, do you
And
want to
people
weigh in?
worry
Not
about
even, Pat hasn't
liability
got a
too.
chance to talk.
Sorry, what, Wes?
Oh, I was just saying Pat hasn't said much, so I wanted to like volunteer him to talk.
No, I completely agree. I think that gaslighting is such like a overly used one, and I feel like that's the one where it's like most used in political spaces too, where it's just like I think we've seen this a lot with like Israel Palestine type stuff, where it's just like people online will talk about how the media is gaslighting them when they just post any headline that goes against the narrative that they have in their head, and
Yeah.
and it's really, really dangerous to think like that, and then to put it out there at the same time is it does. And again, Wes, you use the term weaponizing. It's weaponizing on kind of two fronts too, because it's weaponizing against like the thing the person that you're having a conflict with, but it's also like diluting that term in a way that like gaslighting is a real thing. It's a dangerous thing, and that's in abusive relationships. Like that is a serious subject. But if everyone thinks everything is gaslighting, when you come out and you're in a relationship and your partner is literally gaslighting you and you talk about that, no one's going to take you seriously, or you're just going to not have, you're not going to take yourself seriously. You're going to think, oh yeah, this is just, something people do. And that can, destroy people's lives. People stay in these situations longer because they hear terms like gaslighting or boundaries and think that's a joke. I don't need to worry about that. That's just something I heard online, and walk away from it,
So, quick question bouncing off of what you're talking about, but gaslighting, I think, is a good example, too, of I kind of think some of these terms tend to be, not that they are specifically, but tend to be gendered. I feel like gaslighting has a connotation of men gaslighting women. Now, I think, that is very common that actually happened in history. But also, I think that there's also a situation of women are more tapped into therapy, and I wonder if that's if a lot of these therapy speak things are going to be more noticeable in women because women are more aware of them to misuse them. And then if we'll start to see guys catch up the way, like back to Matthew talking about DEI, like where women have actually been to therapy and know how these terms are supposed to be used, and then guys just kind of catch on to the lingo the way, like, oh, that's, you're being real woke about that, or you're gaslighting me right now. Like, they are taking the lingo by context more than by diagnosis. And I wonder if we're going to have that, because I do feel like a lot of this is gendered. Psychotherapy, I feel like, has been, when you look at it in literature and everything else, I feel like there, in connotation, it's been okay for women, but not for men in a lot of ways. There's a lot of gender dynamics at play.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's the strong silent type. It's the reason that The Sopranos exists and stuff like that. Like, it's very, it wasn't that long ago that it was, considered weird for a man to be in therapy, and it would be, relatively normal for a woman to be in there. Now it's, there's a lot more pressure. Pressure might not be the right word. Going the other way, like if you've been on, I know everyone else in here is married, or but like if you've been on a dating app, you've seen, like, if you're not in therapy, don't even try to match with me, from women. That's a very good thing to be, putting out there, but it's so like, but that wasn't the case for a very long time. And I think you're exactly right that those terms, it's, it's what you were talking about before of like, I kind of know what this means, so I can use this, but it's not the real definition by any means. It's, not, and so you just, use it without even really thinking about the real meaning.
Logan this morning, at some point this morning, said something about he made a mistake in what he was saying, and he goes, "Sorry, I didn't mean to misgender that." And that is so much what we're talking about in a lot of ways, where you get people who don't quite know what the word means, but they've got enough context clues around it.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't actually about gender?
No, it was not.
No.
It was like,
that's hilarious.
it was like, oh, my
Oh,
iPhone
man.
12. Oh, I didn't mean to misgender. It's actually iPhone 13 or whatever. You know, like,
I know
forget
it's
what
the problem that we're talking about right now, but I'm totally going to start using that. I'm going to be misgendering everything.
Excellent. I love it. So,
like Bush
so when
being misunderestimated.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I brought up the theme of this episode to my wife, she was saying, okay, that's all well and good, but you should definitely take a feminist perspective in that sometimes women can't really set boundaries, right?
Mhm.
Sure.
You know, and it's so hard to set boundaries that maybe there was an uptake in the kind of using of therapy language to finally set that like enduring boundary and make that happen.
That makes
And
sense.
I think that there could be an
Yeah.
allowance here where it's like, okay, if somebody's being like the boundary seems arbitrary and like, you know, they're using the therapy language maybe wrong, it's like maybe you should read into that, right? Maybe it's a signal like, okay, they're setting a hard boundary with you that's not necessarily like the precise therapeutic language, but you can read into that and say something's not working in this relationship and back off a little bit. So
Okay.
could
Wasn't
be.
Boundaries the one that, I don't remember the woman's name, but Jonah Hill was
Yes.
using
This, yeah. Yep.
therapy talk, and it was like he was saying, like, you know, because her Instagram had sexy pictures or something like that,
Right.
it was expanding, you know, pushing us
She
the
was a
boundaries of
surf
the relationship,
instructor.
and
Yeah.
and using it.
And her having male friends was crossing his boundaries.
Right.
And-
As if suddenly his boundaries determines who her friend should be.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
like
not,
what
that's
Wes
not what I'm
is
talking
talking about.
Go ahead.
Go
I know,
ahead.
when you said boundary, that one just clicked in my head
No,
that
no.
was a
Oh, I
specific
see.
one that was
He
in
did-
the news. Yeah.
She
Okay,
she did
that's
say
not-
that he was overusing that because he had been in
That-
therapy for years, and
That's a
she
clear example of
Yeah.
doing
Right.
that, I think. Yeah. Pat, what were you saying?
And I think, I think to what Wes, you were just saying though, it's like that comes from not the Jonah Hill part, but like a lot of people brought these things up for very legitimate reasons. You know, boundaries are very important. Like without boundaries, relationships don't work, right? You know, that is really important. It's just when you use it to, you know, in the Jonah Hill example, twist it into these things that are basically, you know, abusive, controlling behavior, it turns into, okay, now I can't use boundaries, you know, and the way it's meant to be used because it's been, you know, twisted, and that takes it away from, in the feminist example, the women that need this to actually, you know, avoid that type of behavior in the men that they're dating, or women that they're dating, or anyone else that they're dating. But so it's you know, very it's just so damaging to, you know, it's you know, pervasive. It, you know, takes over the conversation. It sucks the air out of the room.
But and it gives cover to like abusive behavior. Like if I
Right.
say, I do not allow my girlfriend, I don't allow my wife to talk to other men, that's abusive. If I say, you know, my wife shouldn't talk to other men because it hurts the boundaries of our relationship, and I have personal boundaries of what I feel comfortable with, it sounds like you're in therapy discussing it, and it sounds legitimate, but it's the same thing as I don't let her talk to men, which, you know, would be more clear of that's what you really mean.
And
to be clear, I don't allow my wife to do anything. She does what she's going to do. She's watching right now too, so I.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
I don't allow my wife to watch the pod, so that's fine.
That's unfortunate.
But I would say any therapist in the room that you're having that conversation and they say, yeah, it's against my boundaries to let my wife be a surf instructor in a bikini, hopefully the therapist will say, that's not the right use of boundaries.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Oh, Jonah Hill did it in text messages, though, so no therapist was in the room. Except that she made them public, and therapists said, "Oh yeah, that's crazy."
Oh yeah, right.
I'm a therapist. I know when
That's
something's
too
crazy.
much.
That's crazy.
Right.
yeah, that was a lot. That was pretty.
Yeah.
That was not a good exchange there.
Yeah. I think, Wes, also when you're talking about the giving women a little more leeway, that is something that I think it crosses over in other areas where, like, so Matthew and Alex and I are we you know, this podcast is very focused on atheism, in a lot of the time. And I realized in the last year that I've been doing something that I think is kind of low key sexist, which is, for whatever reason, I've been more annoyed by astrology than by like religion, like in a lot of ways. And I'm like, oh, but that's just like, that's a very specific gendered response. And I think that like what you're talking about is like, yeah, if a lot of women are doing something too, there is like an attack on it too. And I think, like, you know, this is when you talk about therapy speak. Sorry, I don't know why my dogs are going nuts. When you talk about therapy speak, there, you know, there is that like gendered balance of like women probably are more aware of the terminology, and I think guys are probably like rolling their eyes at it more than if you said I need to have my boundaries, and a guy just, you know, if you heard I need my space, you know, like there isn't that much difference in terminology in meaning there, but because it's more official sounding, I think that there's almost a tendency to like roll your eyes at sometimes the other thing, and that and unfortunately ends up being a gendered issue. I think at least it can be, and it tends to in the ways that I'm seeing it. I hope that you're not chugging beers while we're talking about this.
It's not trigger words, and it's not traumatic. But I will say, anytime someone says, "How does that make you feel?" I am instantly 12 years old talking to my therapist again. Like, instantly, I am with Jay Schneebach on Coney Island Avenue talking about my feelings.
That's actually, Matthew. So you know, you probably have a very different experience than us. Well, than us for two reasons. One is you're a little bit older than us, and
the fucker.
I'm being kind when I say a little bit.
Little bit.
And then also you're Jewish, and none of us were raised Jewish, and I feel like Jewish people are have been way more on the therapy train for a long time. Well, than
we had Woody Allen being in therapy in the late 60s, early 70s in movies, telling us it's okay.
Well, so he famously said that a lot changed when he went to therapy, because when he started, he was 26, and now he's 35.
Yeah. It's amazing how that happens.
No matter how old he gets, though, his girlfriend stayed the same age.
Okay.
Oh, no, he stopped having girlfriends after he married his daughter. Come on. Now let's talk about the Oedipus complex.
Right. I really feel that now that I mean my wife is much more in tune,
Alex,
with therapy. What?
Your what?
My wife is much more in tune with her with her mental health, but also how therapy has benefited her life. And I'm still sheepish to use these terms with many other people besides the folks that I'm speaking to now or her, because in many situations, because they have been either misused, like Wes and Patrick both mentioned, or worse, they have a gender bias. I don't want to use it in the way I think is correct, and it probably is, but then have it interpreted wrong, like Matthew was saying, the food allergy kind of angle, right? If I say something that causes another to change topic, method of communication, body language, whatever it may be, I'm saying this for the benefit of both of us. But I'll sometimes just say nothing and grin and bear it, or exit the conversation, because I'm still not totally chill talking about it with a lot of people, because I came to this comfort so much later in life. And I mean, I was really only like maybe 37 when I was like, oh yeah, no, this stuff happens. And that makes sense why that went that way. My therapist is my favorite person, because she'll curse at me and she'll tell me off, and it's the best part about it. But I told her an action that I had, and she said, "What childhood trauma made that okay?" And I thought, you know what? Good call, because none. That was just my knee-jerk reaction to this person acting in this manner. So I'm still not totally cool just saying any of these terms to just the general public. I won't even type them online.
It's a weird experience, because you're saying childhood trauma right now. And by the way, thank you for talking about everything you just did. But I'm like, when I hear that phrase, I think about it like almost like they're trying to, like someone's trying to sell me a stick of deodorant or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Like erases childhood trauma. It's so inappropriate, right?
it is.
And I think a big piece of this is the consumer angle too, is that this is a way to get eyes on social media and like sell, I guess, like negativity and drama in some respect,
Yeah,
and that
and,
cheapens the
and
whole thing for people where they could be having a good conversation with lots of humility and like, what do you mean by that? Like, I want to know, da, da, da. Now we just
yeah,
got this melange of terms that really is getting more and more meaningless.
And
I
they've
don't
all
know.
well,
become things that are about like avoiding that, point of conflict, or
mhm,
that little bit of, like, hey, I really, I think we should talk about this, and I think we should,
yeah,
you know again, the term is, kind of infected, but like, I think we should set some boundaries about this. Let's figure it out together. It's become like, no, instead you should be practicing self-care, so use the Calm app and spend some time there, and then you're going to be fine. And that's not the way any of this works, because you do need to, therapy doesn't necessarily, isn't the only path, but like, you do need to
that's
talk to
true.
people. You need to have conversations with people and work with people.
So, Wes,
So
tell me if I'm crazy,
Yeah,
because you're qualified. Um, but I think I'm just thinking this now. There's not a thought I've had before or dwelt on, but that's why I was using
sure,
technical terms or jargon is a way to avoid dealing with the real discussion, right? Like it's like I don't have to have a discussion about what happened to me when I was a child if I can just say, "Oh, I had childhood trauma," and now I don't have to discuss it because I used a buzzword to take its place, or even saying like Patrick was talking about, it's good to set boundaries in relationships. But if you just say, well, I have these boundaries about that, then I don't have to discuss it. I don't have to say, this is why it hurts me. This is how I feel about it. This is what it makes me feel like. I don't have to say anything because I used a magic word that people think they know what it means. Or I think I know what it means, whatever. And now
yeah,
it just shortcuts the full conversation that you would have
yeah.
to
I
really
mean,
delve into what you're really
I
feeling.
think that's what we're here to talk about, right? Is like people using this as a magic word, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm uncomfortable, therefore you have to stop, right? I'm uncomfortable, therefore
mm,
you did something wrong. Instead of saying, hey, for me that can make me uncomfortable, and like, yeah, I don't want to have to stop you. It's just my own thing, da da da. It's like
Yeah.
other people don't have to change their behavior. Like if you're gonna have a behavior, or sorry, a relationship based on mutual respect and like a two-way street, it's like you have to be able to like ask for things and then negotiate them, right? You don't just get to have like a magical buzzword that makes like, the problems that are inherent in like a relationship with two people just go away. You know,
Yeah.
if you do have childhood trauma and it's like a
yeah,
real thing, then it's like, yeah, you should be able to bring this up, but just know that, like that person's not necessarily like a qualified therapist, and they might misinterpret or not know what to say to you, or start talking about their own thing that's not like related, right? Like, like a boomer, you're like, I've had this experience a lot with boomers. You're like talking about, oh, the world is still really segregated and racist. And they go, well, when I was young, I did this thing, and it's like, that's not the fucking point of the conversation, and I know
Yeah.
that's a little bit different than mental health, but, if you think that someone's just going to use the opportunity to talk about themselves and it's going to kind of hurt you, because they didn't really listen to you, then maybe it's not the right person to bring it up with and use
Hmm.
that terminology with, or talk about the thing in the first place,
Yeah.
So,
Do you think that the overuse and weaponizing of this therapy speak is damaging the therapy process at all, like the genuine
I
therapy?
was literally, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is how has it affected you being an effective therapist?
so I'm mostly an individual therapist. I don't do couples work, and I think it would come up a lot more there when you have people projecting their feelings onto one another.
Yeah.
Okay,
For individuals, if they come with a misconception, I can usually get more information and like use something like the DSM to point them to where to either provide psychoeducation, where I'm saying, okay, these wouldn't actually be your symptoms. You don't have PTSD because of XYZ thing. right?
Yep.
You don't match up with the symptoms here, but I understand this was a very stressful thing for you. Da, da, da. So it's that process of doing the diagnostic work and then providing the validation to where the people can kind of get where they need to go.
Okay.
I will say that most therapy issues, what most people are affected by are what are called attachment wounds. And attachment wounds are things that happen when you're a child, so usually from birth up until about 10 years old. And they have to do with our relationship with our parents. And a lot of people take those feelings and they carry them throughout their lives, and they aren't talked about or validated or discussed. And people end up saying, why do I feel this way? I must have X, Y, and Z diagnosis, right? Or there's a pattern that's playing out in the relationships that they don't realize is a pattern that was kind of something happening in their household growing up, right?
Okay.
So most people are not walking around yet saying, you triggered my attachment wound. When they do, that's going to be a problem. But, as a framework, that has helped avoid a lot of jargon, at least for me, for the time being.
Okay.
I think people are going to be really hesitant to use that one for a while. Okay, mommy? I mean, Wes, I mean... No, I agree. I get your point about the couples therapy versus individual. I do wonder if the process of therapy, as we see it as a society, is adjusting at all because of are people more likely or less likely to go into therapy because they have experienced this outside of therapy? So, I'll give you an example that's slightly off topic, but not entirely. You guys all know that I was sexually assaulted as a child. Now it was what I consider a minor, I was groped by another child, and I had a very hard time using that terminology until a therapist was like, no, that is what happened. And I was like, no, but sexual assault is this other thing. Do we get into that state of being with therapy of no, I don't have trauma, that is trauma? And I know you just said that word's kind of overused and not specific enough, but do you get that aspect of it at all where people are saying here is this word, and I don't feel like I'm qualified to use it because everyone, back to overdiagnosing narcissism, overdiagnosing PTSD, trauma, overdiagnosing, or not self-diagnosing, overusing the terms, autism, things like that. Do you see that people are sometimes more hesitant because the rest of the world is I have narcissism and ADHD and autism, and then you get people who are genuinely needing the therapy who are well, I don't think, and they're do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, narcissism is the thing you give other people, not yourself, usually. So that's usually how that goes.
Yeah.
I'm
a narcissist. So.
Yeah, we know that.
We all
that
have
song,
to be to do this.
That song is actually about me. The one
Carly Simon.
Yeah.
Man, you're so vain.
9 Inch Nails covers that. I love the 9 Inch Nails cover of that song.
Yeah, it is good.
I gotta admit, Mike, I'm having a little bit of trouble linking everything you just said. I think that
welcome to my life.
There could be over referral to therapy, right?
Yeah.
Because I get this a lot with mothers referring their 10-year-old boys to therapy. I think it would be great if my 10-year-old boy had therapy, and I'm sitting there yeah, I'll do 3 sessions and have this kid not be able to understand anything I'm saying. Sure, we'll give it a shot. It never works. It never works because it's not an appropriate age for therapy.
Right.
It's also someone else's guidance that's leading us to that, and they might need it more than they think their child does.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
So it's very much a self-report at that point.
Well, I guess, okay, so I'll reiterate and try to clarify better. What I'm asking is, do you have people come in who are willing to go through the therapy process, but don't want to attach labels or are hesitant to attach the labels to themselves, even when you're no, it is this, because they're worried because of the bipolar.
Stigma?
Like I said, I've been diagnosed with bipolar several times, but I hear people all the time say oh, they're bipolar, he's bipolar, she's bipolar, just throwing it out there in a willy-nilly sense. And I think people can get hesitant to be I don't want to be called bipolar. I don't want to be diagnosed with that thing that everyone used to describe the asshole they don't like.
Okay.
That's what I'm, and I guess I wasn't very clear on that, but that's what I'm trying. Like, do you see any of that hesitance?
Yeah, well, so as an individual therapist, so I've done both individual therapy in like kind of the online realm, and I've worked in psych hospitals,
Yeah.
right? And what you're talking about is something that's going to happen in psych hospitals a lot, where they're like, I don't have schizophrenia. It's just the FBI is watching me. Da, da, da. And that's of course like psychotic disorders.
Yeah.
If you're breaking it down into something like a personality disorder or like antisocial personality disorder, that goes with the territory of that diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's what's called ego syntonic, right? And that means it synthesizes with their ego and their concept of themselves, right? What does Matt say? I don't have multiple personality disorder, but I do. Okay, wonderful. There's a good joke that goes along with that. I can't remember it.
Yeah, you put the stress in the wrong place. I don't have multiple personality
disorders,
but I do.
Oh no, the one that I'm thinking of is my doctor said I have narcissistic personality disorder, but I don't think anything's wrong with me. But yeah, so egosyntonic means that it just, they don't see anything wrong with themselves, right? So it goes with the territory in certain diagnoses. And those ones, people are not really likely to stick around in therapy when you're like having them do the actual work of therapy. So what you're asking might be a little bit of a contradiction in terms.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So learning it, they're chill with that part, but as soon as it's the work to improve oneself, they're like, effort, nope, I'm uncomfortable with that, which is a whole nother diagnosis path.
Yeah. Okay. And that's like the real mental health stuff, right? So most people come in and they get what's called an adjustment disorder, which means they have a life event that happened to them that affected them, and they're still processing it.
Right.
All right. So it's an adjustment disorder, but they're not scoring anything for depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are relatively rarer to come into your door as a private therapist. That's more likely to happen in like an agency setting. So people that are so mentally ill that they're not able to keep a job, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So all this to say that, I mean, to reach the thresholds of some of these terminologies that people use is actually pretty hard to do and pretty rare.
That makes sense. I mean, the narcissist thing is a clear, it's
extremely
clear
hard threshold to meet
because there's no way that everyone that we use that term, I try not to use that term, but like, there's no way that there's that many narcissists running around.
So you can have narcissistic behavior on a spectrum, right? So all the way up until narcissistic personality disorder, you have this specific thing that you just need that control around the dishwasher. Oh, the dishwasher, like I got to control it. Oh, you're such a narcissist. You think your way of doing the dishes is better, right? That's like a more of an interpersonal conflict. But you could say some of the behavior is a little bit narcissistic if you're not like giving your partner the chance to like state their case or whatever else. That could be a little narcissistic. It's it's a continuum of behaviors up until they're so clinically complex that they're actually getting you to a point where you can't function in the society.
That makes sense.
Understood.
Okay, should we start wrapping up? I know it's early for US, but I'm hungry. It's 8:00 here.
I've got to pick up Cleo, so we can wrap up.
Yeah. All right. So, do you guys have anything you want to plug before we? Pat, you could plug anti-ice stuff if you want, since you're in the war zone right now.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific to plug, but any opportunity you have to support, the undocumented folks and immigrants that are under assault right now, please take it. There's it's come for Chicago and it's come for some other cities, but it's going to be coming for, pretty much anywhere that didn't vote for Donald Trump is in trouble. So,
probably even places that did.
Yes,
like North Carolina voted for Donald Trump and he still didn't give hurricane relief. He doesn't really care.
Yes.
Yeah, and especially I would think purple places. It'll just be localized to cities.
Right. New Orleans. Yeah.
All cities are basically blue, so any city he can. It's just going in size order.
Exactly.
Fair. And Wes, do you have anything you want to promote or? plug?
And I'm trying to think about it with the topic on hand and not just like listen to my band.
I'm going to
can plug
be
your band.
plugging
Fine,
my
just
book.
listen to my band. My band's called the Lazy UFOs. Look them up. My band's awesome. So
yeah, they are.
just
Awesome.
do that. Yeah, thanks.
All right, and Matthew, you want to start your
Hey,
spiel?
everybody. Listen, if we have been filling your eye holes for the last hour, or if this is in a clip that Alex pulls out in post, you're going to want to follow our YouTube channel because you want to know when quality videos like these are coming out. You're going to want to ring the notification bell so you are the first to know that quality videos are coming out. And you know what? If you want to help others find us, like the video. I know. Ricochet Rita, I know you hit a heart 1,000 times in the chat. I don't care. Like the video also. And then comment in the regular comment section. The live stream is great, but also put comments in the permanent comment section when the permanent version of the video goes up, because that tells the algorithm that this is juicy content that they should be seeing. So please, my video brethren, subscribe, ring the bell, like the video, comment down below.
Yeah, and if you're listening to the podcast on any of the apps, please give us a thumbs up, like, plus sign, a review, whatever is good on your particular app of choice. And if you want to give us money, you can go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff, where we have 3 paid options and a free option, where you can support us at your leisure. And I won't get into the whole thing because I know that our guests probably want to get going soon. But yeah, there's options on there for you. And I'm just going to do a real quick plug because this is the first episode that's going to be coming out after my book has released. The Dinner Party came out this past Tuesday. If you're watching not live, and Wes and Pat, Wes read it, Pat edited it. So
and Pat and I are both in it as thinly veiled versions of ourselves.
They're the other diners at the dinner party.
I am so glad I avoided
opening of that book says none of these people are based on real people, so I don't know what you're talking about, Wes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm the one that gives Mike a blowjob.
The one. There's so many blowjobs in that book. And if you want to read about blowjobs, go to the Dinner Party and go buy the Dinner Party.
So I'm guessing the story about you and Goose is not in there?
It is not.
Oh,
that'll be for patrons. I'll open the show next week with the
Your
story
next
about
book
me.
should just open with a vivid description of that.
Yeah,
I love that story. That's my favorite Mike Cole story.
Yeah. All right, Matthew. One last line, and then I'm going to hit stop.
I just want to thank all of you, especially Wes and Pat, for joining us. I can't get the words out. For talking about the big stuff these last hour or so. It really made me feel good, and I'm not going to misuse any psychology or psychotherapy terms when I say that.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the three of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.